Hi everyone, and welcome back to Learn Academic English. In today's video, I'm continuing my series on how to write correct sentences in English. In the last couple of videos, I talked about what independent and dependent clauses are, and I talked about fragments, which are a piece of a sentence, a common error when writing in English. Today, I'm going to talk about coordinating conjunctions and what are called compound sentences. So compound sentences are usually the second type of sentence that we learn how to write. The first type of sentence that we learn is called a simple sentence. A simple sentence is an independent clause. In other words, an independent clause has a subject and verb. For example, I was born and raised in the United States. Here we have one subject and we have a verb, was born, and we also have the second verb, raised, but we have one subject. So that's a simple sentence. It's one independent clause. A compound sentence is when we take two of those simple sentences and we put them together. So a compound sentence, the formula is I see, that's independent clause, meaning that there's a subject and verb, comma, coordinating conjunction, and I see. So we have two independent clauses and we join them together with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. This is a very common and pretty easy type of sentence, but it's extremely useful because, first of all, we use them all the time, but also because you can express many different meanings with these special conjunctions. For example, we can say, I was born in the US and I live in California. So you can see here that we have subject, verb, and we have subject, verb. So we have independent clause, and then we have a comma, and. In the second one, we can say, I was born in the US. Now I'm going to show you a different punctuation here. We can use a semicolon to combine those two sentences, and then we have our second independent clause. This one is not as common, and it's also not as good, and I'll explain why in a moment. But this is another possibility, that instead of the comma and the conjunction, you can just use a semicolon to combine those two independent clauses. So before I show you more examples, I want to talk about the coordinating conjunctions. The coordinating conjunctions, there are 7 of them, and we also call them fanboys. Fanboys. Fanboys stands for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Those are the 7 coordinating conjunctions. And again, you want to remember the formula that we have independent clause, comma, coordinating conjunction, and then independent clause, period. So let's take a quick look at those. For, this meaning of for means because. It's not like this is for you. That's a different meaning. And shows another idea. Nor, which means also not. It's like a negative and. But shows contrast, so it shows ideas that are different or an idea that's unexpected. Or shows a choice or a warning. So this or has 2 possibilities or 2 meanings. Yet shows an unexpected contrast. So it's like but it shows something that's more unexpected. And finally, we have so, which shows a result, or that's why. Now, I have an asterisk next to the ones that are the most common. So and, but, or, and so are the most common ones. We also use yet, nor, not very often, and for, we hardly ever use this word in this meaning. So if you want to remember the most important ones, you want to remember these 4. And then maybe also yet. Okay, let's take a look at some examples of sentences with all of these conjunctions, and then I'll show you a few small rules that you need to remember when you use these conjunctions. Let's take a look at some examples with these coordinating conjunctions. All of the examples I'm going to show you today are related to the topic of doing volunteer work. First, I'm going to show you a sentence with for. I want to do volunteer work, for I love meeting new people. So here you can see that for shows the meaning of because, it shows the reason. As I mentioned before, we hardly ever use for in this way. so it's not one that you probably need to worry about too much. Next, and. I used to do volunteer work every weekend, and I want to start doing that again. So notice here that and is joining two independent clauses. Each independent clause has a subject and a verb. Next, nor. I don't have a lot of time for volunteering, nor does my family. So this is not very common, but it is a possible construction. With nor, we're going to flip the order of the subject and the verb, but the verb, we have to insert the helping verb. Nor does my family. But I love working with animals, but I will probably work with refugees. So here it's showing a contrast because I love working with animals, but I will probably work with refugees. Next, or. I could help them with English lessons, or I might help them with paperwork. So here we have a choice. I'm not going to do both of them, so I'm saying a choice. I could choose one or the other. Now we can also use or to show a warning, and how this works is that we have two clauses, and in the first clause we say a situation, and then in the second clause we express what will happen if that first situation does not happen. For example, I can't take on too many hours or I will get too busy. So if the first situation doesn't happen, then what is the problem? The problem is I will get too busy. A very common one would be like this. Make sure you wear a coat or you will get too cold. Okay, the next one is yet, which shows an unexpected contrast. Doing volunteer work feels so good, yet we rarely make the time for it. And finally, so, which shows a result or that's why. I'd like to volunteer with a friend, so I'm going to let my friends know. All of these examples are pretty easy and casual sentences. We use coordinated conjunctions in both casual conversation, but also in formal writing. They are a very important tool in formal writing, so the writing that you would use in school and work, to help you add variety to your sentences. And when we teach English in the college level, we always make sure that our students know that they can use coordinated conjunctions to help them write different types of sentences and to express all of these very important meanings. There are a few other small rules that you want to know. First, when you have two clauses, you can actually take the subject out of the second clause if the subject is the same person. And when that happens, it becomes a simple sentence and we use no comma. Let me show you an example. I used to volunteer every weekend and want to start doing it again. So notice here that I have I as the subject in both clauses. I can take the subject out of the second clause. This actually makes the sentence more concise. This is a good idea to do sometimes, but when I do that, we no longer have the IC, comma, conjunction IC pattern. Instead, this clause is not an independent clause anymore. It becomes one simple sentence, one independent clause with one subject and two verbs. I used to volunteer every weekend and want to start doing it again. The second thing I wanted to tell you is that when we have two very short independent clauses, we sometimes will skip the comma. For example, I work from home and he does too. Or I teach English and he teaches Spanish. Those are pretty short independent clauses and sometimes we will just skip the comma. Next, remember I told you that you can join two independent clauses with a semicolon? Well, that is true, but I wanted you to know that this is not as effective. And the reason for that is that when you use a semicolon to join two independent clauses, the meaning of the conjunction is missing. We sometimes will do this if the meaning or the relationship between the two clauses is very obvious, and that's usually for and. For the other ones, if we use a semicolon in the middle, it doesn't show the meaning of the conjunction, and therefore it's not as effective. And finally, Different styles of writing. You know that there is writing for different purposes. We do writing for work, we do writing for school, we do writing for creative writing, we do writing for newspapers or magazines, and those all have different styles. What I want you to know is that in some styles of writing, you can see this pattern where you have a period at the end of the first independent clause, and then the coordinating conjunction actually begins the next independent clause. But we do not use this in school. For academic writing, we should use the form that I showed you before, where we have a comma and the coordinating conjunction to make one compound sentence. So as always, I will have a practice in the comments and the description below, and I would love for you to practice with me. Make sure that you come back for the other videos in this series. I'm going to talk about adverbial conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, making longer sentences, and all kinds of other tips to help you write sentences correctly and add more variety to your writing. Take care, and I'll see you soon.